Hi everyone, I'm JD from Willow Journals. Welcome back to my channel. This is a Journal With Me episode working in my reading journal, and the book that I'm focusing on today is called Emotions by Charles Stanley. I read it as an ebook, so I bought it from Amazon, and the reason why I read it is because Apple of His Eye Nanda on Instagram mentioned this book in her faith journaling course, or one of her courses. And she was just saying how this book really impacted her, changed her life. And anytime someone says that a book impacts them or changes them, I kind of want to read that book, because even if it doesn't change me, I'm intrigued by what was it that changed someone else, what impacted someone else. I find that endlessly fascinating. And so I put it on my reading list. And also, Charles Stanley, I remember in the past, there was this Christian radio station I listened to often called Vision FM, and they would have different speakers and podcasts playing throughout the week, and one of my favourite speakers was Charles Stanley. So I thought, yeah, this book I want to give a go. But what actually made me end up reading it was, well, this is a bit of a story, and I kind of mentioned this in my previous Booktube video where I was talking about A Man Called Ove, and I love that book, one of my favourite books that I've read this year, but how I had to stop reading that book at a certain point because I was going through a really sad time in my life, and this book just was making me feel sadder, and so I came to the decision that I needed to stop reading this book just for my well-being. And then once I was out of that sad place, I went back to this book, and so glad, because I loved it. But yeah, just while I was going through this sad phase, I thought I needed to stop reading that book and read something else that would uplift me. And because I didn't really know why, there was no particular reason why I was feeling sad, it just kind of hit me all of a sudden, where I was like crying for 3 days straight and just was so consumed and felt overwhelmed by this sadness that I didn't know why I was there, and therefore didn't know how to get out of. And so reading Emotions, I thought, would be helpful to, because I was feeling strong emotions. So I'm like, okay, this book might speak to that. And it very much did. It was a very, very timely book, and it was just what I needed for that time. And I very much literally mean it was a timely book, because now when I look back at this book, I've kind of forgotten a lot of what I read, and even when I look back at what I read, when I go to the book and just skim through it again, the things that I read are wonderful things, but they don't actually connect with me now like the way they did back then, in such a great way, just because I'm not where I was back then, and it's not meeting my need right now, but back then it really, really was. So perhaps at a different time in my life, this book wouldn't have been anything notable, but because of just those strong emotions I was going through and that sadness, this book I was very thankful for. As soon as I started reading it, it helped me feel better straight away. And my thoughts overall in this book was that, the main thing is, it helped me to break out of my sadness, which is wonderful. And it helped me to understand emotions better, and helped me to just feel uplifted and not sad anymore. And this key thought, I wrote it the wrong way in this journal, but the idea that our thoughts can cause emotions, that often we think it's the other way around, that our emotions cause our thoughts. But if we direct our thoughts, they sort of affect our emotions. And so that's a tool for us. We don't have to be ruled by our emotions. We can manage them through where we direct our thoughts, through controlling our thoughts, through, we can't control every thought that pops into our head, but to actively focus on helpful thoughts rather than harmful thoughts. That it's not an automatic thing that we just have to be, willy-nilly going wherever our thoughts and emotions take us. We actually do have some agency, we do have some control over our minds, and can direct our thoughts in certain ways. And so that was helpful for me, just to not get overwhelmed by those strong emotions that I was feeling, and to, I guess, direct my thoughts in a more helpful way. Because I know how anxiety, depression, sadness can make me think along a line of dark thoughts, where I can kind of go into catastrophe mode, I can go into doom and gloom mode where everything is terrible, and as soon as I'm out of that emotional phase, my thoughts are totally different. And I know that even in experience in my own life, like one day I can just be feeling so terrible and my thoughts will just be completely negative, and then I'll wake up the next day and I will be just naturally feeling completely differently. I'll be like, oh yeah, I feel great now. I'm feeling upbeat, let's go. And my thoughts will be completely different to the day before. And because I've lived with myself and seen this throughout my journey, throughout my life, that's taught me something good to know, that, I don't actually have to believe my thoughts and think that they will last forever, because I know that they are just so fickle depending on my mood, and my mood is so fickle as well. And to know that the way I'm feeling right now and the way I'm thinking right now isn't necessarily going to be the way I'm going to think or feel tomorrow. And so when I get into those dark modes or depressive modes, I could start to panic and worry and be like, oh no, what if it's like this forever? And what if my thoughts are really true? And what if I'm stuck in these emotions forever? Now I go, you've thought this before, and things just change in an instant. Just get a good night's sleep and probably tomorrow you won't even think like this. Well, a week from now, you'll forget that you even thought like this at all. Just going to loop this video because I've got more to say. And then the other key thought from this book is just the idea that, what are we believing? Are we believing our thoughts and what our emotions are telling us, or are we believing God's word? Are we believing his truth? And when I can get into those negative doom and gloom thoughts, I don't have to just go along with them. I can go, hang on, no, what does God say? He says I'm loved. He says he is with me. He says he is for me. He has a plan for me. Instead of going along with my thoughts of, oh, I'm unlovable and my life is terrible and nothing will get better and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, which one's more helpful to think of first of all? And, am I giving authority to my thoughts, or am I giving authority to God's truth that he says we are loved and he says he's with us and all that kind of thing? Another idea that I really liked was in one chapter, it was talking about the value of emotions and taking them seriously, and that they are a gift and a tool, because my younger self was very against emotions. My younger self would have been like, no, emotions are bad, they are just problematic, and push them away, ignore them, and I would try to be a person who didn't have emotions. And so to know, it would have been helpful for my younger self to know that emotions are actually good things, that they are given to us by God for good, and that we can use them for good. And I like that idea that they are gifts to us, and we, yes, of course, can get overwhelmed by them and they can feel really bad at times. But that idea that we do have some sort of agency and some sort of control, and if we can direct our thoughts, that will naturally affect our emotions. And it takes effort and it takes energy, and you don't always want to direct your thoughts because you just want to go along for the ride and be taken along with your emotions. I totally understand that. But something that I learned for me is, if I'm going to do something good for my well-being and do something healthy and helpful, then I should just put in the effort. And even if I don't want to do it, and even if I don't feel like doing it, it's going to help me in the long run if I take a bit of control back and don't just float along with my emotions and let them take me and overwhelm me, but actually choose to, I guess, let my thoughts redirect them. So yeah, I hope that little rant or ramble on this book was helpful, enlightening. It was definitely a challenging book too, actually. Very, very challenging about, what am I believing, and where am I putting my thoughts, and how seriously am I taking this, and will I put in the effort and the energy to direct my thoughts and emotions. So very challenging. Yeah, what am I believing? Yeah. Another idea that helped reminded me of was, in those dark times you can think, oh, everything's terrible, but to remember, no, God's come through every single time in my life in the past. He's never just left me or let me down. He's always been with me every single step of the way, and taught me and grown me and held me. And just to remember that, just not be so fickle, and in those times just to remember, yeah, he's totally there, and he is with me, and he's going to come through again. And don't just be washed away and let these emotions drown you, because let God take you out of that sea of emotions, if that analogy helps. Because he always comes through, always, always, always. And sometimes when we're lost in our emotions, we lose sight of that, or I lose sight of that. But if I just remember and look at my track record, or his track record in my life, he has always come through. Okay, dog barking, sorry about that in the background. I'll end this video now, and hope you're doing really well. May you know you are so, so loved, and that God is with you, even in the darkest times. And yeah, I am always trying to film these videos when the house is quiet, and when the dog's barking, it can be a bit of a trying time. So we've had workers next door building a shed, and between all of this, I've been struggling to film at the moment. So anyway, I'll just push on anyway. Often when the dog's been barking, I've had to just re-film everything, and I'm just going to keep on pressing on. So anyway, we're at the end of this video anyway, so rambling over. Be sure to journal your life, because your stories matter, and I'll see you in the next video. A big thank you to my beautiful patrons who supported me in November. I hope you absolutely loved all of the extras this month. And if you would like to support me in December and get access to extra videos and printables, behind the scenes updates, and first access to any of my creations, the link is down below in the description box. The links are also down there to all of my journaling courses. The Reflections journaling course is running all through December if you would like to document your year for 2022. And if you would like to support my book fundraiser, the link is there to my GoFundMe page as well.